We continue the Shir Rabbi Arizal. Until now we have learned the Sefer Shvochei Haran, which dealt with the life of Rabbi Arizal, and then the story of Rabbi Arizal's Nesiyah, his journey to Eretz Yisrael. Before we start the next Sefer, called Sichos Haran, or the sayings, the wisdom of Rabbi Arizal, I believe that it's very appropriate, having discussed the story of Rabbi Arizal's trip to Eretz Yisrael in such detail, it is only fitting that we now take up a sequel to that story, rather than save it for a much later date. Sequel to the story of Arizal's journey to Eretz Yisrael is the story of Rabbi Arizal's Talmud Muvchak, Rabbi Arizal's main Talmud, Rav Nosson Zal, and his trip to Eretz Yisrael, which paralleled Rabbi Arizal's trip in many respects. It is different, of course, to many respects, but it is also a fascinating story of adventures that could not be conceived of today. Again, we must first make clear who Rav Nosson Zal was. Nosson Zal was Rabbi Arizal's best top student. Rabbi Arizal himself testified that if not for Rav Nosson Zal, there'd be no trace of Rabbi Arizal's sayings or writings today. So actually, we have Rav Nosson Zal to thank for the fact that we are Mekushar attached to Rabbi Arizal. The fact that we have Rabbi Arizal's writings, his Sforim, the fact that Nosson Zal wrote so many Sforim too, and elaborating on Rabbi Arizal's sayings. Nosson Zal wrote the Likutei Tfilos, one of the greatest Sforim that exist, a Sefer of Tfilos, prayers to Hashem, that literally open a person's heart to bring into it a deep sensation, a feeling where the heart pours out by itself words to Hashem. It softens a person's heart, even if the heart is made of stone. It turns into a heart of soft flesh, Leiv Basar, which means Breslov. That helps the person to come close to Hashem, because there's nothing that brings a person closer than tefillah. Nosson Zal was the Skadev to Rabbi Arizal for a period of 9 years. And this too is similar to the case of Reb Chaim Vital Zal, who was the Talmud Muvchak of the Ariyah Kodesh, Arizal, also for about the same period of time. Now, we come to this point where Rav Nosson Zal felt a very strong cheshek, a deep craving to fulfill the words of his Rebbe, words of Rabbi Arizal, in reference to the Kedusha, extreme Kedusha that a person can achieve by going to Eretz Yisrael. There was no one that took the words of Rabbi Arizal as much to heart as Rav Nosson Zal. Nosson Zal, who though he was probably the greatest Goin, greatest Talmudic genius in his time, still felt that he knew nothing whatsoever. He discarded every drop of wisdom that he had, and said he will contain in his mind only that which he receives from Rabbi Arizal. That's the only chachma he deems worthy. Doesn't mean, of course, that he forgot Shas. Naturally, it means that he felt himself, he knew nothing whatsoever. He was like the moon, literally. Greatness in this case was he felt like the moon, which has no light whatsoever of its own, except that which it receives from its mentor, the sun. This is the case of Rav Nosson Zal. But surely, Rav Nosson Zal felt this much more strongly, the importance of achieving the accomplishment of being in Eretz Yisrael. So he wanted this more than anything else. The question is that he was with Rabbi Arizal for a period of 9 years, and this was after Rabbi Arizal came back from Eretz Yisrael. And having heard so many statements by Rabbi Arizal about the vital importance of going to Eretz Yisrael, how come then Rabbi Nosson Zal never went to Eretz Yisrael during those 9 years? You say, fulfill the words of the tzadik emes. Well, then go to Eretz Yisrael. Why in those 9 years did he not go to Eretz Yisrael? At the time when many others did. And who else would be the one to fulfill this command, this advice to the Nosson Zal? The answer is a very clear one. The answer is that Rav Nosson felt a trip to Eretz Yisrael, the distance was such that today, going from the southern part of Russia to Eretz Yisrael by plane would take under 4 hours. Would take less than 4 hours. The trip in those days, the round trip, would be as much as close to a year. This meant that he would have to leave Rabbi Zal's presence and be away from Rabbi Zal for close to a year's time. Nosson Zal felt this was too great a price to pay, even for the sake of being in Eretz Yisrael. So highly did he regard every moment that he stayed with Rabbi Zal, and he felt he could not leave Rabbi Zal's side. Now the question would arise in a person's mind, how could he, not of course questioning Rabbi Nosson Zal's wisdom in making a decision like this, at least to ask why. Why would he make a decision like that? Why would he feel that Rabbi Zal's closeness was better for that year than being in Eretz Yisrael, since Eretz Yisrael meant achieving the top? Or what would be his origin? Where would he derive it from? The answer is, the Gemara says that the greatest Talmud Chacham next to Moshe Rabbeinu was Ezra HaSefer. Ezra HaSefer, who gave us a lot of our laws as far as the Torah is concerned. Ezra HaSefer, who the Gemara says was so great that Hashem would have given the Torah through Ezra HaSefer, if not to Moshe Rabbeinu. Next to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ezra HaSefer, who was the one that brought the Jews out of Golus, Babylon, back to Eretz Yisrael, and there to build the second Beis HaMikdash. He was the leader of the Jews at the time of the rebuilding of the second Beis HaMikdash. And therefore the second Beis HaMikdash is called the Temple Beis HaMikdash of Ezra HaSefer. Now, you would say then that Ezra HaSefer will be the first one to return to Eretz Yisrael after the Golus. He's the one that's instrumental, the leader, in bringing the Jews out of Golus, going to Eretz Yisrael, building the Beis HaMikdash. Could you ask for a bigger mitzvah than that? Kibbutz Goliath, take the Jews out of Golus, return to Eretz Yisrael, build the Beis HaMikdash. Imagine the greatness of that mitzvah. Gemara says Ezra HaSefer did not go to Eretz Yisrael. He sent the others. He remained behind in Golus. Why? Because he had a Rebbe whose name was Baruch ben Neriah. He said, as long as my Rebbe is alive, I will not leave his side. This is more important. Hence, we can clearly see Rav Nosson Zal's reasoning. We do not need proof for his reasoning. But we note, though, the Gemara does say, give a parallel case. And so, during Rabbi Zal's lifetime, Rav Nosson Zal did not go to Eretz Yisrael, did not leave Rabbi Zal for that period of time, except, of course, there was a time when he was at a distance against his own will. Rabbi Zal himself left for a certain city for a cure. There were reasons then, too, when he was fulfilling missions by Rabbi Zal. During all this time, Rav Nosson Zal kept on strengthening himself, sharpening his will, his desire to get to Eretz Yisrael. Imagine a person whose heart and mind craves the privilege of experiencing walking on the soil of Eretz Yisrael. Now, after Rabbi Zal's Estalkus, Rav Nosson Zal immediately thought it over in his mind, he considered this, and he felt that the best plan would be now not to go to Eretz Yisrael, but to move there permanently. Why not live there? As far as Parnasa Alamni is concerned, he could find a means to provide for himself. Wouldn't it be best to go there, not to walk 4 steps, but to every single day breathe the air, walk on the soil, live and become a part of Eretz Yisrael, and eventually pass away there, be buried in Eretz Yisrael? As you mentioned many times, the importance of being buried in Eretz Yisrael is so great that people who die outside of Eretz Yisrael request they be shipped to Eretz Yisrael, which of course is not too advisable in all cases, because the Torah says a person who is evil is shipped to Eretz Yisrael and buried there. The earth itself spits out that body. We don't see it physically, but the earth refuses to accept this body for burial. So, of course, what happens in the spiritual sense is that the body is not considered buried there. However, a person who does deserve it, does merit this zechus, tries to see that he is buried there, though he passes away outside of Eretz Yisrael. But surely it is much better a person gives forth, releases his soul in his mother's arms. The mother is the land, in the Eretz Yisrael. The importance of being buried there is simply because the Torah says that a person, when he passes away, returns to dust. He returns to the dirt in which he is buried. The soil of Eretz Yisrael is Kaddish, it is holy. So a person becomes part of that dust, that soil. His physical being, the remains, become holy as part of that soil. A person buried in Eretz Ha'amim, outside countries, returns to the soil of Tumah, the Tomei soil that people walk on throughout the world in any country outside of Eretz Yisrael. So, this is the reason why the Arizal felt that it would be very advisable for himself to move to Eretz Yisrael, to actually settle and live there permanently. Then he considered this, and he reconsidered, and he decided that not only could he not go there to live, but he could not afford the time to go there to visit, to be there for one day or for one moment to walk the 4 steps. Arizal decided he could not go there at present because he was doing something that was so vitally important he could not spare the time. Arizal occupied himself now with the sacred task of getting the words of Rabbi Nachman printed. Rabbi Nachman's Sefer Le'ikutei Maharan, his main Sefer, plus the Sefer Midas, which is known as Sefer Aleph Beis, Sefer Mesias. Rabbi Nachman's Sforim were not yet that much spread. And as it is brought, the Levi said, that when the well of wisdom of the tzadik emes is spread throughout the world, that is what brings Mashiach closer. And therefore, the Arizal felt it was his duty to occupy his time solely with this most important of all tasks. Spread the Torah of Arizal to others, let others drink of this Torah, because by doing so, he could literally save the lives, the souls of those who would drink in these words. And just as today, people today, many who would have fallen, who would have gotten lost completely, come to a shir about Rabbi Nachman, open a sefer by Rabbi Nachman, open a Tikuney Zohar, and they have a deep feeling of tshuva, they return, they go back to the path of Kedusha, the righteous path. And therefore, Rabbi Nachman felt that he would have to postpone any thoughts of going to Eretz Yisrael, no matter how important it was, because of the fact that he was doing something better by printing Rabbi Nachman's Sforim. Again, that sounds a little strange. Where does that decision come from? To feel that printing the Sefer, distributing Rabbi Nachman's words is more important than going to Eretz Yisrael, is there an origin for that? Well, as far as an origin is concerned, we can only say that if we have these words from our superiors, our teachers, our rabbis, that is sufficient. The Arizal said so, decided so, and certainly it is so. But we cannot add to this. We can only state as a side item that I experienced this question myself. Many years ago, when I first made my first trip to Eretz Yisrael, at that time I came to Rabbi Kochav Leibzal's home. Rabbi Kochav Leibzal was unquestionably Emunah Shleima, stating the fact he was the tzadik emes in this generation, just as Rabbi Nachman was in his time. Kochav Leibzal was the greatest tzadik alive. I came to his home. Of course, it was the most thrilling experience possible, conceivable. There, I felt the excitement of being in Eretz Yisrael, and I had the opportunity. So my first question was to Rabbi Kochav Leibzal, isn't it advisable for me, now that I've seen Eretz Yisrael, I came, I saw, I should conquer for myself a piece of land, meaning an apartment, a home, and settle here just as so many Jews are living there. Why should I stay out in the land of Tumah, America? It's a very colorful land, but why be there when I can be in the purity of Yerushalmi? It was a question that I really sought an answer for. Rabbi Kochav Leibzal did not hesitate a moment. That was always his nature. He had the answer always ready immediately. And very firmly he replied. The answer was, if I could quote it practically verbatim, translating it, he said, no, da. know that Eretz Yisrael is Kodesh. It is holy. Every part of it is holy. Woe is to that person who speaks badly about any part of Eretz Yisrael. Everything about it, both the living and the inanimate, the earth, is holy. So, of course, to live in Eretz Yisrael, you are performing a deed that is constantly Kodesh. However, being outside of Eretz Yisrael and striving to bring close those people, those neshamas who are far from religion, who are far from the knowledge of the great light and the tzaddik emes, to bring them close, to feed them this information, to give them a new life, a new spirit, spiritually, that is Kodesh Kodeshim, holy of holies. Those were his words. Therefore he said, it's very good to live here, very important. But if you can be there, that distance, outside of it, so bring boys, young men, children, to the knowledge of Arizal's writings, inspire them with the desire to follow Arizal's advice and his teachings, that is more important, much greater deed, than living in Eretz Yisrael. And that was the decision which Baruch Hashem I followed for all these years, till the time comes, of course, when the hope, yes, Hashem, as every Jew does, to settle in Eretz Yisrael eventually. From there we can see, not that this is proof, of course, we can understand more the reason why the Nosson delayed his going to Eretz Yisrael, because he felt, he knew, decided he was doing something more important at the time, and that by doing this, he would eventually be zeichet to get to Eretz Yisrael. Well, this went on for a period of close to 12 years. And the Nosson's trip to Eretz Yisrael was approximately 12 years after Rabbi Nachman's passing. That's how long he spent before going to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, all that time, his mind and his actions were devoted to this mitzvah of spreading Rabbi Nachman's teachings, both in print, printing the Sfarim, and going out to spread the word himself. Now, in the year, Rabbi Nachman was nostalgic in the year 571, 5,571, and 9 years later, the year 5,580, Nosson then decided it was time to start thinking about going to Eretz Yisrael, to make concrete plans. He discussed this with a close friend of his, very close friend. His name was Rabbi Eliezer, and they decided to make a pact. They both traveled together in companionship to Eretz Yisrael. Nosson said that this is on a condition first. He told him that I must go to a city in Russia called Nikolaev, and there to try to raise money for printing. And we'll make that be the deciding factor. Let's go there first. If I receive a large sum of money which will help me to complete the printing, then I remain here. If I fail to raise that large sum of money, there's no sense in remaining here, and then we shall go to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, there are many times that a person makes plans. Not always do those plans culminate the way he wants them to. Nosson went to the city of Nikolaev. He tried his best to raise the necessary funds. He could not succeed in getting those funds. Despite this, he could not succeed either in getting himself to go to Eretz Yisrael, because no matter how he tried, no matter where he turned, he could not raise the necessary expenses. So he felt very sadly over the fact that he could not get to Eretz Yisrael yet. Afterwards, he traveled further. He was always traveling from city to city, helping to instill the fire of Rabbi Nachman into the hearts of those who would listen, raising money both for the printing of Rabbi Nachman's Sfarim, and also for the maintaining the shul, the clothes, in the city of Uman, where Rabbi Nachman's Tzion is. Rabbi Nachman's buried. Rabbi Nachman's Tzion is in the city of Uman. It's not far from Breslov. It is exactly equidistant in between the city of Kiev, the southernmost port of Russia, Odessa. Between these two is the city of Uman, where Rabbi Nachman's Tzion is located, and where the shul in which Rabbi Nachman's followers got together especially for the Shoshana and davened there. Also during the year, those who lived in Uman. Those who would go to that Sion mostly on Erev, the day before the Shchedesh, as Arizal advises, for certain months of the year, aside, of course, from the Shoshana itself, the most important time. So Arizal now traveled to the city of Odessa. There he heard that Arizal's closest Talmud, who served the most closely, Reb Shimon Zal, we spoke about him during the life of Arizal. He was the very first Talmud of Arizal. And Reb Nosson Zal's closest friend, Reb Naftali Zal, he heard these two may be going to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, Reb Shimon Zal is buried in Eretz Yisrael, buried in Sfas, just below the Tzion of the Aliyah Kodesh. He decided this was the time to go. He would go together with these two great tzaddikim, and he went so far as to actually give a deposit for a ticket on board a ship going to Istanbul. The first leg of the journey was Odessa to Istanbul. He gave this deposit, and then, as time went by, he was about to begin the journey. He had a change of heart. He felt that he was in the middle of doing certain things he could not leave, and so very reluctantly lost the deposit. He forfeited it. And when the others left, he just sat there very despondently and cried. He actually cried to Hashem as to his sad lot. He had not succeeded in either one, and now he was left without this journey which could have culminated in his coming, realizing his primary wish in life, being in Eretz Yisrael. So instead he turned, began to travel to the city of Uman, where he was supposed to be, Erev Chodesh Elul. The month of Teshuva, it was customary to get to the Tzion Erev Chodesh Elul. Rosenfeld came there, there on the Tzion he poured out his heart before the Beit Tzion, and he felt a little bit stronger after that. He felt assured that this was a temporary setback. He would be zecher to get to the Tzion eventually. In the year 5581, we see the reason for this delay. Because then Rosenfeld finally, after all this labor, all this self-sacrifice, he finally realized the biggest ambition of all. It was zecher to print, bring out and print the Sforim, the Kutei Maran, the Sefer Hamidais, and the Sefer Shemesh Tzadikim, which was improved later on, was filled in much more. But this was a schus that lasted for many generations. In fact, till Mashiach comes, this was the greatest schus possible. To this day, there is no question or doubt about it. We must state this openly. These words are being taped in heaven. We must state openly that we would not be sitting here at this moment learning about the Arizal if not for the fact that Nosson didn't completed this printing. So we today are fortunate the schus of Nosson's works. Everyone owes Reb Nosson a very deep debt. And Ashreinu that we're zecher to be among those who have that debt in our hands. Why we should become more in debt to achieve much more from Reb Nosson's words and a much greater tie bind with Reb Nosson. One year later, 582, this was the year in which Reb Nosson realized his ambition. At that time, very appropriately it seems, very sadly but appropriately, a major war broke out when the Greeks rebelled against the Turkish Empire. The Greeks became very strong, and they began a major war against the Turks. Of course, this had many effects. In Eretz Yisrael, when the Turkish Empire was at its strongest, remember they held the city of Akko. Napoleon's forces had been repelled. They entrenched themselves much more so. So now this battle that kept going on, this was a battle that spilled out over into the sea, the naval forces, which meant that it was very dangerous for any boat to attempt going to Istanbul, or from there to Alexandria, or to Israel. So at this time, this was a media, an obstacle that rose up, seemed to block all possible desires to get to Eretz Yisrael. Despite this fact, Nosson decided to go to Uman, there to pour out his heart in front of the Menachem Mendel Schneerson. He began to make this trip, and this was to get there Erev Shvat. He decided to make this trip there, and just then a storm broke out. The storm was so serious, so severe, it was impossible for any wagons, any coaches to ride there. Arizal felt he must get to the Menachem Mendel Schneerson, so he bribed a coachman, offered him a very special high price to take him, and this was after dark, take him on these treacherous roads to get to the city of Uman. And of course, such a powerful desire must be blessed with success. He got to the Syrian Jewish. There, this was Tov Kuf Pei Beis, 582. There he poured out his heart, and he felt that he must get there this year. Then he began to think about an additional point. He remembered that Arizal had traveled to Eretz Yisrael also at a time of major warfare, the time when the Napoleonic forces attacked the Turks. It was naturally very dangerous, practically impossible for a person to make this journey. Despite this seeming impossibility, Arizal did make the trip to Eretz Yisrael and returned. So many adventures, many hazards. They did return safely, and so, of course, he said to himself, he cannot compare to Arizal, but yet, it is a sign, though, that Arizal was so great and would take these risks, and surely we who need this tikkun, who need this benefit so much more so, should surely take these risks. This was the thought that passed through his mind. He decided that he would not allow the war to stop him from making this trip. A short time later, Shabbos Shida, that's the Shabbos where they read the Kriyas Yamsuf, Parshas B'Shalach, he began to think too, and he read the Torah, and the posek says, Menachem Mendel Hashem did not take them along a short path to Eretz Yisrael when he took them out of Egypt. He took them along a long path, very long path to get to Eretz Yisrael. And why take them along a long path? Very big kasha. Nothing else was he thought it was kasha for a long time before he could find an answer to it. Hashem said he wouldn't take them because they would not have to see the enemy, there'd be warfare, they'd become frightened. Could there be fright, warfare, problems with Hashem leading them? Hashem could pave the road for them, could sink the enemy into the ground. What was the problem there? Why did Hashem have to take them out a roundabout way, a very long way, and get into even worse problems then, rather than take them directly to Eretz Yisrael? Rosenfeld finally got to the answer where he stated emphatically that this is the case in all times, in all generations. In order for a person to realize the importance, the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, then heaven itself deliberately places obstacles in front of that person to make it more difficult. And the more difficult an item is, naturally, the more desire it creates within a person. You take something away from a person, he wants it still more. And so this is how they tease a person to making him desire it more and more. The more desire he has for it, the more sacrifices will make, the more effort will put into it, which will make the mitzvah so much more valuable. This is the purpose that each person who goes there for kedusha has these medias, these obstacles set up before him, and that is to increase his desire. And this is a test for every single Jew. It is a test to see how much he will put out, how much he'll give of himself to fulfill his most important mission in life. That mission is to get to Israel, of course, for the sake of kedusha, to rise up higher and higher in Madrega, and that we get closer and closer to Hashem. So he felt that this is that important that he cannot afford to think about the war going on. Whatever risks have to be taken, he would gladly take. Then Nosson went to the city of Kremenchuk. These names undoubtedly sound unfamiliar to most people who are Americans. These are cities in Russia. Those people who lived in Russia recognize these names immediately. The word Kremenchuk, it's a small town, small city, would have no place on the map. But it does have very important connotations for the Breslover, and especially for us. Kremenchuk was the city of Rabbi Arizal. That's the city where he was rabbi first. Then in Uman, and of course then in Yerushalmi. At that time, in Kremenchuk, there lived two of Rabbi Arizal's daughters. Rabbi Arizal's daughters living there were Sarah and Chaya, and R Nosson received a request from Rabbi Arizal's older daughter, Odel, to bring regards, the message to these two daughters. They've been traveling to the city. In those days it was difficult to travel by coach, and R Nosson felt that, stated that since Rabbi Arizal's Estalkus, he felt it a sacred duty to serve Rabbi Arizal's daughters with the highest possible respect. And so no matter what sacrifice this entailed, he would bring this regards to Kremenchuk, to Rabbi Arizal's daughters. When he came there, he heard a story that pleased him. He felt the trip was really worth it. Heard a story about a very wealthy man who had approached Rabbi Arizal before Rabbi Arizal made the trip to Eretz Yisrael. This wealthy man said to Rabbi Arizal, "You're going to Eretz Yisrael, please take me along with you. If you take me with you, then I'll go to Eretz Yisrael. If not, I won't. No, it's up to you." And Arizal said to the man, "Why do you want me to take you with me? Why only me to take you? Why can't you go yourself?" The man said, "Well, that's the way I want to go. Myself, I won't go. If you take me then, I'll be good enough to go." Then Arizal turned to his Talmidim and cried out, "This is not the way to get that at Yisrael. You do not make conditions. You don't make stipulations. I'll go if you do this, if I get that." The way to go is when Hashem said to Avraham Avinu. Hashem said, "Lech lecha." Lech lecha means go. How? How go? Go on foot. Walk. A person should walk and should crawl to Eretz Yisrael. If you cannot get transportation, then walk and crawl there. Could a person walk from America to Eretz Yisrael? Well, it would be about the same question as asking, could a person walk from Russia to Eretz Yisrael? The trip takes by boat, round trip close to a year, or over land, on land by mule, it would take more than a year. How does a person walk to Eretz Yisrael? Now, Hashem said to Avraham, if you feel the value of the land, you'd be willing to walk if you cannot get transportation. That sounds strange or impossible. And of course you would say, well, it's so many thousands of years ago, there were different people then, right? Wrong. You have the same type of people today. Same 248 organs, the same mind, the same heart. It's up to the way you employ, the way you use your faculties, the facilities that you're blessed with. We have today one Breslov in Yerushalmi. Most of those who have been there know him, from Tzviayim Little. Tzviayim is one of the closest Talmidim of Rabbi Arizal. Many years ago, he was in Uman and spent years there. Every night he spent time to Arizal Syrian for hours. Every night for hours, pouring out his heart, begging the Arizal to get that Yisrael. That was his fond hope. Arizal said, "Get there." He said, "Help me to get there." Finally, he decided that the way to get there is only by overcoming all obstacles, the hard way, which means lech lecha, go by foot. This is not a fiction story. This is not a tale of thousands of years ago. This is a tale that happened now, in our time. Syria decided to go by foot, and this meant going through alien territory, going through Mongolia, Manchuria. You don't speak Chinese, you barely speak anything. To go alone among these subhuman characters and on treacherous roads, places where a person can get lost forever. He decided it was worth it. He would do it. He did it. It took him 9 years' time. He walked from Eretz Yisrael from Uman to Eretz Yisrael, practically the entire way on foot. He made it. He went through all these different lands, different countries. Many times that he was sentenced to death, caught by these carnivorous humans, cannibals, and there were stories that could not be put in print because the publishers of fiction would throw it out as being too far-fetched. If this was a true story of an experience of one today, not thousands of years ago, but today. This is what Arizal said then. You want to get to Eretz Yisrael, you have to be willing, if necessary, to walk to Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, of course, this rich man did not succeed in persuading Arizal to take him. Rosenfeld felt this story were the most consoling words he had heard, because this strengthened him, gave him new strength, new desire, new courage to break through every possible obstacle and to fulfill his ambition. After Purim, Rosenfeld again went to Odessa. Odessa is the jumping off point. It's the port, southern part of Russia. And from there, one gets a boat to Istanbul, Turkey, thence across the Mediterranean Sea. He came to Odessa, and there he wrote a note to his friend Yudah Eliezer to come and meet him in Odessa. At this time, they would leave for Eretz Yisrael. This was immediately after Purim, and he saw then that he was having difficulties again, and realized he could not leave before Pesach. He had to stay Pesach, over Pesach in Odessa. He was staying so many weeks in a strange city, but he was willing, because of the final point, the final fulfillment of his ambition. He stayed there and continually waited for word from his friend Yudah Eliezer. Now, end of Pesach, Rosenfeld was lying down. Suddenly he heard a shout. He got up and he saw Yudah Eliezer come. His friend had arrived. This was such a simcha to him. He leaped up and he kissed him. The friendship was so strong, and it manifested so. He displayed it by kissing his friend. Rosenfeld jumped up and kissed him. Usually, of course, this is a definite sign. It may sound strange in a way. Of course, lehavdil, you have that among Goyim. The certain European customs where this is done among friends or relatives, but here it's done with much more kedusha, because this represents the Shechina Ubala, the Chibuk, Nishuk, Yichud, and holiness. We find too that Rosenfeld wrote about the fact that when they went to Arizal, then when they would depart, they would kiss Arizal's hand. That's not an exceptional case, of course. We know that even today too, the Hasidic rabbis, many of them, have a custom that when they give a bracha, the Chassid would kiss their hands. This is Hasidic rabbis. You have regular rabbis, not rabbis chachams, among the Sfardim, where this is very prevalent, very customary. Of course, what this all refers back to is, there is a definite yesod, a reason for this. Arizal states clearly that if a person wants to have the bracha of a tzadik come true, when the tzadik gives him a bracha, he said, kiss the tzaddik's hand, the bracha will be fulfilled. That's why, of course, this is not practiced much today, very frankly, because we do not really know of tzaddikim today. Of course, here we don't know of any. In Yerushalmi, we have one where we say that the person who gets a bracha from the tzaddik emes today in Yerushalmi kisses his hand is very fortunate. Very big zechiyah to do that, because it's a difficult thing to do. The tzaddik emes does not allow you to do it. If you can sneak it in quickly, you've got it made. But this is why we can understand that there is a very deep kedusha for this. And this kedusha we can see too at a moment of simcha. Arizal says that when does a person reach the highest point of kedusha, not when he's crying, when he's sad, but when he's at the highest point of simcha, he gets to the highest point of kedusha. And therefore, at a wedding, when the people are very gilufim, very elated, very happy frame of mind, there's customary deep happiness and deep affection for the friends in the chassid to kiss the chassid. Some people look at this askance, as though it's a strange, a unusual type of act. In reality, it is usual for others to do it, but that's for the case of yeshiva persons, people of kedusha. This has a very important meaning behind it. So Rosenfeld was very happy with Yudah Eliezer. They both stayed together for Pesach. And Rosenfeld writes that on Shvi Shel Pesach, the seventh day of Pesach, when we celebrate the division of the waters of the Red Sea, they daven Vosikin. This is an important note for us, because here we have definite proof, as it is written elsewhere, that the custom, our custom, following the writings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Moshe Shlomeinu, that on Shvi Shel Pesach, it's one special day when a person should not allow himself to miss that minyan of Vasikin. Baruch Hashem, a person can have Vasikin every day, of course, it's naturally a blessing. But that is a day to remember. The day of Kriyas Yom Suf, the Ashmenis, when the dividing the waters took place, a person should then be davening Vasikin, which is one of the greatest zechuyas a person can get in davening. But we also wanted to pursue further this topic, the question about the advisability of leaving for Eretz Yisrael immediately. He went to see a very wealthy person who knew a lot about what was going on there. He came to this wealthy person's home with a desire to hear something good about Eretz Yisrael. If any person would, this rich man was lying there, reclining. He had to speak with words of evil, not against Eretz Yisrael exactly, but against the idea of traveling there. He said that the Greeks then were very powerful, they were very dangerous. The war had reached a peak where any person who would attempt to cross the sea then would truly be destroyed, and that it was definitely, he stressed this, it was definitely impossible for any person there to attempt crossing the water to get to Eretz Yisrael. Because even there too, there was danger. The Greeks would attack Israel. Arizal looked at this man. He saw that this man was not really human. He was a human person, but in him, there spoke through him the Satan himself. He needed an exorcist. He had the Satan himself in him, and of course the Satan would do this, trying to dissuade the Arizal from going. Satan knew that this was the biggest kedusha that could be reached in that generation. Arizal getting to it. Arizal fled this person's house, refused to entertain any thoughts about what this man had said. But he went directly to report to the agent and paid for 2 places, the cabin on board the ship going to Istanbul, first leg of the journey. This ship was a ship with maybe the only Jews on board, all Goyim on that ship. And of course, this meant that there would be danger too. Because the Goyim generally, if they have Jews alone on board with them, they might do something harmful to the Jews. Rosenfeld did not pause to think about what this entailed, as to whether it was safe or not. He felt only that the journey was worth any type of sacrifice necessary. To get this done, of course, there was a lot of difficulty because around the port section, you have ships of all different nations. So a person who does not understand the languages could not speak to any of these sailors or seamen around. Rosenfeld states too, this is an interesting point, that he could not even speak Russian fluently, spoken weakly. And that's why today people marvel at how some people living in Williamsburg, going to yeshivas there, speak a very poor English. They were born and raised in Brooklyn. The English is very poor, like foreigners. The answer is they do not bother with a language that is not holy. They speak Hebrew or Yiddish, or whatever language is holy in their land, Bulgarian, or Sephardic, Syrian. They do not care for the language that's strange to them, and we see proof of this. The Arizal, who lived in Russia all his life, could speak Russian, but not fluently at all. We'll see this later in his dealings, negotiations with the ship's captain. The rest of the story, of course, becomes much more exciting as we go to the actual trip. We'll continue this story in Mitzvah Hashem subsequently, the next shir. Again, the purpose of the story is, the moral is to teach us that since these great tzaddikim made such sacrifice to get to Eretz Yisrael, then surely we should bend every effort and not allow ourselves to miss that opportunity, to be zecher to get to Eretz Yisrael, to drink of its waters, to breathe of its air, to walk on its soil, and to receive the kedusha that one can attain there. We should be zecher to all get there, eventually, shortly, to get there, together with the entire Klal Yisrael, the kibbutz goyes, the coming of Mashiach, to see with our eyes the Bnei Beis HaMikdash and Heda. Amen. Amen.
Rosenfeld himself. Tonight's Hilula, the Rosenfeld, if you'll know for yourself, it is a celebration in more than one way. First, as a matter of Yiras HaKavod, we want to welcome the guest, the Kedusha of Rosenfeld himself, who is truly present at this Hilula, and whose first blessings we invoke tonight. We ask that He bestow upon us His brachas to fulfill the wishes, desires, and needs of everyone present, the Ruchnius and the Gashmius. Nosson, as we know, is the key to Rabbi Arizal. It was a place that brought one of the Talmidim of Rav Nosson, one of his Chavedim, came to speak to Rav Nosson. He came to the house of one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Arizal. This Talmud of Rabbi Arizal testified, stated very clearly, that we know more about Rabbi Arizal from Rav Nosson than from Rabbi Arizal himself. Those who sat at Rabbi Arizal's shiur did not gain as much from Rabbi Arizal and about Rabbi Arizal as much as those who sat at the Nosson shiur. So that it means that even today, to this day, everything we have from Rabbi Arizal, all Rabbi Arizal's writings, his words of wisdom, his advice, every bit of Kedusha that we have attained, every bit of his kashrus to Rabbi Arizal, we owe entirely to Rav Nosson, because he is that link to this chain that brings us close to Rabbi Arizal, to the tzadik emes. Just as we have the continuation of that chain through Rabbi Rav of Breslov to this day too, Rav Nosson is a direct link, tie, bond to Rabbi Arizal himself. Rav Nosson himself is the Talmud Mufhak, the one and only, the special, official Talmud of Rabbi Arizal, just as Yeshua was the Talmud Mufhak of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the tzadik emes, Yeshua was the Talmud Mufhak of Moshe Rabbeinu, although Moshe Rabbeinu was the composite of all the Jews at one time. The Gemara says, one woman, Yaakov, gave birth to 600,000 Jews at one time in the time, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the 600,000 Neshamas combined. And therefore, the Torah, which contains 600,000 letters, corresponding to the 600,000 Neshamas, the souls of the Jews, that Torah was therefore given by Moshe Rabbeinu, who stands for those 600,000 letters. The posek says, "V'zeis ha-Torah asher sam Moshe." This is the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu placed before the Jews. Asher, in the portion say, means the letters Shishim Riboy Osiyas. Asher are the 600,000 letters that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the Jews, because he himself is that Torah. He himself is the Torah. He is the Am Yisrael. And so too we find the posek where Hashem said, Shagom hu basar, koyu yomov me'aviyasim shon. The Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu was hinted at in Bereshis. Hashem wrote the Shagom hu basar. So from the time of the Shagom, the Gematria Moshe, he will be the one that will live 120 years, will lead the Jews from Mitzrayim to the border of Eretz Yisrael. We'll lead them to Har Sinai to give them the Torah. The Shagon Hu Bosor is the Gematria Shishim Ribut, 600,000 too, because that was Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah himself, of course, Pariyag is the Gematria Moshe Rabbeinu himself, but this is the Torah. Shishim Ribut are the ACAs, the Neshamas that Moshe Rabbeinu stood for. This, Yeshua, was a Talmud who took over all the teachings of Moshe Rabbeinu, enabling him to further lead the Jews afterwards. We're speaking about these moms, Matan Torah, when they received the Torah to the Moshe Rabbeinu. At that time, note, Arizal brings the last Torah of his lifetime, Tikuney Zohar. Arizal says this is his farewell talk to his Talmidim. He spoke about the time of Matan Torah. And what happened in Matan Torah? The Jews turned away from Hashem, turned to the Egel HaZohar. There the prophet says, Nirdi Nosson Rechoi. The Jews, the color, the bride, turned away from the chassan at the altar, turned to Avodah Zarah. The prophet says that the fine aroma, the purity of the Jewish neshama was then spoiled, or could have been spoiled. The Gemara says this fine aroma, the tzreach of the neshamas of the Jews, does not say it became spoiled, ozah, it says nossan rechoi. There was still this tzreach nichaya. There was still this purity of the Jews, though they turned to the Egel HaZohar. Because that was done by the aid of Rav. So Arizal brings this posek to show that when the Jews turn away, there is still a kesher, there is still a tie. Because it says, Nirdi Nosson Rechoi, Nosson, through Nosson, Arizal's Talmud, of Rosenfeld, there is the kesher, the tie to the Moshe Rabbeinu. Proof is that we find. What happened during those 40 days when Moshe Rabbeinu went to heaven? He was Bashamayim, and the Jews had then turned away with the aid of Rav, doing something wrong. Where was this Talmud? Where was this Talmud Wukot Yeshua? At that time, for 40 days and 40 nights, he did not spend with the Jews then, even though it was me, Kilo B'tzibur, Rabbi Nachman, speaking Torah to the Jews. He spent his whole time waiting at the foot of the mountain, alone, isolated, alone, waiting that day and night without a pause, without a stop. Spent his time in isolation for what? Waiting expectantly, looking up constantly, waiting for his Rebbe to come back, waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu, to the extent that he had no idea what was going on. The Torah tells us Moshe Rabbeinu came back. He was sent down by Hashem. Go down, your people have committed a crime. He came and he found Yeshua waiting for him there. Only Yeshua. He said to Yeshua, what's going on? Yeshua answered, I hear a sound of battle. Because they were celebrating with the Egel HaZohar, they were screaming cries of Avodah Zarah. Yeshua said, I hear a sound of Muhammad. There's a battle going on. Moshe Rabbeinu said, it's not a sound of battle. It's a sound of evil doings. But a sound of battle, Yeshua is standing by the mountain, there's a battle going on. He thinks he was the general. He went to battle against Amalek. He was the top fighter of the Jews. Why is he there at the mountain when there is possibly battle Muhammad going on in the camp? The answer is, everything became null and void. Nothing counted. He was there waiting only for his Rebbe. His consciousness time was so perfect, was so pure, that he forgot everything that existed. He wanted only to see his Rebbe, and that was it. This was the act of Rosenfeld. But Rosenfeld, nothing counted. You go to Eretz Yisrael, very important. The most vital item out. A person cannot become an Isha Yisraeli without that. Rosenfeld did not go to Eretz Yisrael during the Arizal's lifetime. He could not part from the Arizal for a moment. Then we find to it Yeshua. The Medrash says Yeshua set up the benches for the Talmidim to sit before Moshe Rabbeinu. He had the benches set up, chairs set up, tables set up for learning. He himself did not use a bench or a chair. He sat at the feet of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Medrash says that the people all laughed at him. They called him a ksil. Look at this fool. He's a fool sitting on the floor, acting like a child, working on setting up benches and tables. What kind of child's work is this? And so he was scoffed at. He was mocked. by his friends, by his colleagues, by the rest of the Jews. So what did Yeshua do? He ignored every sound, every word of derision against himself. The Medrash says that all this naturally witnessed by Hashem. Hashem said to Yeshua, or life was shalim sechocha. I will take upon myself. I will pay you rewards for your deeds. Your reward will be forthcoming, but all these laughs will change to looks of admiration, to looks of regret for themselves, because the result was, because of these deeds of Yeshua, he became the leader of the Jews. This too is the work of the Arizal. The Arizal, his greatest asset, his greatest milah, his greatest midah was his shiftless, his anivus. He considered himself literally nothing. Though he was one of the wisest Talmidei Chacham of that generation, he felt, honestly, he knew nothing whatsoever. All his knowledge was worthless, only that which he gained from Rabbi Nachman's mouth. That's what counted for him. And this shiftless, this anivus, Rabbi Nachman noted. He said he considers himself like mud in his own eyes. Eventually, he will be the leader. And of course, nothing else succeeded Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman too acknowledged, accepted, and stated openly for all to know that whatever we have today, Rabbi Nachman said, we owe to Rabbi Nachman. Further, Rabbi Nachman says in the Nichtal, the Talmidim, Rabbi Nachman wrote a letter, a very sad letter, reporting the passing, the start of Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman says there, he spoke to the Talmidim just before his passing. He said to them, on Teves, the month of Teves, 3 successive days, 3 tragedies occurred. The 8th day of Teves, the 9th, and the 10th. The 8th day of Teves, the Torah was written in Greek by Talmud Bavly. This was so great a tragedy. Written in Greek means that the kedusha of Lashon Kodesh was desecrated. Therefore, the Gemara says that for 3 days, 72 hours, there was no chesed, there was only din. The world became dark. A period of 72 hours of darkness, that means that the chesed is gone, the cheshech and din prevailed. The 9th day of Teves, the passing of Ezra HaSefer, the passing of Tzadik. The 10th day of Teves, the Hufza'ah Ha'ir, or rather the sieging of the ear. The 10th day of Teves, the day of Rabbi Nachman, very fittingly, what happened there was that the Nebuchadnezzar besieged the city of Yerushalmi. He laid siege to the city. Eventually, the city fell. Eventually, there was the Churban Beis Hamikdash. The Medrash says that this day is so bad, the tragedy is so great, that Asura B'Teves does not come out on Shabbos. Tisha B'Av does. Shulchan Thomas does. Segedaya could. All these Tanesim, Tisha B'Av, Shulchan Thomas, Segedaya, they come out on Shabbos, they are postponed. They moved over to Sunday. Asura B'Teves can never come out on Shabbos. But if it would have come out on Shabbos, the tragedy is so great that there would be no postponement. We'd have to fast on Shabbos for this Tanis. Fortunately, it cannot come out on Shabbos. Why is this so big a tragedy? Because this was the beginning. The Aschala, the beginning of Torah, is the hardest and most difficult of all. And therefore, for this sad moment, you need something to counteract this. A very powerful antidote to counteract this tragedy, this downfall of Kedusha, the descent of Kedusha. You must have a terrific power. The status of the tzadik is one where the tzadik himself becomes much greater than before, and his Kedusha can then tackle and can nullify, in Machmiyah, subdue the tumah that comes out on that day. We find that the Gemara says that Kol HaKaidei Kriya Shema Balayla, if a person reads Kriya Shema at night, he is saved from mazikim, certain kinds of evil spirits that could harm a person. He is spared from these mazikim through the power of Kriya Shema. The Gemara says there's a posek, B'nei Reshef Yagdiha Oy. B'nei Reshef Yagdiha Oy. Reshef means mazikim, shaded evil spirits. Yagdiha is saved to the oath. Enos Alatayla. The Aruch means, Aruch means to fly, Ya'uf means to fly, a Torah which flies. Flies meaning unless the person doesn't read it, it just flies off, it leaves him. But the word means, the sentence tells us, that through Torah, through Kriyishma, a person is saved from these mazikim. Why are mazikim called Resha? What is there about Resha? The answer is, Arizal says, that we have the most powerful combination. The Kedusha is the Adon HaSholem. When a person is married, you have a powerful combination where he becomes a complete person. The Kedusha. In heaven too, you have the combination of the Duchra and Nukva, you have Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, and Shem Aleph Dalet, the Malchus. When that is combined, you have the most powerful combination of Kedusha. The word Omein is so important because Omein contains both. You have this two dangerous combination. You have the Satan, and the Satan has a wife. There is that combination to Betula. The Satan is called the son of Mem. The Satan's wife's name is Lil. You don't finish the word, but you have that in the Agdama to the Tikuney Zohar. Lil the Gematria 480, plus the 5 letters, it's 485. The antidote to that is the Hill of the Gematria 485. Tikuney Zohar is a composite of Hill. You have now the Samach Mem. There are 2 letters at the end of the word Samach Mem. The Satan's name is Samach Mem, plus the Aleph Lamed at the end. But the Samach Mem has evil. The word Samach Mem is poison. Aleph Lamed gives it the heavenly power. Heavenly power to be used for evil, for poison. When you take the Samach Mem without that heavenly power, and the Samach Mem's wife looks for will, you have a total of 580, so 100 and 480 is 580, which is Resha. These mazikim called Resha, combination of the Samach Mem and the wife, the Nukva, which is the most powerful combination of Tumah. When we have Din, we know always that Din is very harsh. The harshest degree of Din is the Teket Hadin. Teket means the highest point. Teket is 580. Teket is not the Resha. The highest point, and then we have this combination of the Samach Mem and the Lil. But this is all because we separate the Aleph Lamed, the Kedusha, from the Samach Mem. And that is why, what is the true counter action to this? The antidote is the Torah itself. Because the Torah is the Gematria, the same Samach Mem and Lil, with the Aleph Lamed, with Kale. Our Kale then is used to destroy, to subdue the Koyach of this Teket Hadin. So Torah is the combination of these both with the Aleph Lamed, used for Kedusha. That's what subdues it. Therefore, we find too the Tikuney Zohar says, an offering, that the Yosef Lavoi, we say in the Haggadah, Chad Gadya, we say there that goat is eaten by the cat, the dog, the stick, the fire, the water, the ox, the shechet, the Malach HaMavis, that is the Samach Mem. The Malach HaMavis will be slaughtered by Hashem. What is it by slaughtering the Malach HaMavis? How do you slaughter the angel? And the Vedic says Hashem will slaughter the angel by taking a knife, a sword, and cutting him in half, meaning to cut off the Samach Mem from the Aleph Lamed. Because part of that is Kedesh, removed from the Samach Mem. So we see that the Aleph Lamed is the Kedusha which could overpower that Tumah. Therefore, the Torah with the additional Aleph Lamed would overpower the combination of that Teket Hadin. And therefore, we understand how, very clearly, why Yaakov Avinu, then he asked the question, why does the Torah tell us Yaakov Avinu sent a gift to Esau? He sent 200 of this type of animal, 40 of this, 20 of this, 30 of that. A whole list of animals. What's the big deal about these animals? Listed yet too. Why didn't they spend time listing them? Count the total number of animals, you find that these behemoths equal to 580. Because we have on Yom Kippur, if we want to defeat the Satan then, on Yom Kippur, what do we have? We have the So'il Azazel. So'il, the Gematria 580. which is sent off to Azazel to destroy the power of the Satan on the day of Kippur. This was the story that Yaakov sent to Esav Ish Soy. So Azazel to destroy the power of Esav in evil. How could Yaakov do that? Because it says in the course of Ikraloi, Hashem Kale. Hashem called Yaakov Kale. He gave this power of Kale, which is the power removed from the Son of Men, now could destroy the Son of Men in the floor. This is the soil. This is the Son of Men that destroyed the base of the slave siege to Yerushalmi. And to counteract this, we have the power of the tzadik. Rav Nosson will bring out the light of Rabbi Arizal. After on this day is his yortzeit. On this day his light shines brightest. On this day we can receive from that light, be zocher with that light, and we can go forward to look forward to the Geula Shlema, look forward to the Oy HaGula. We should be zocher to the key. The key is the way the Shuli Leish Amunah. You want to see it to come to it, you have to have the Leish Amunah. The first rule is Amunah. Amunah is tzadik emes. This is what the Nosson gave his life for. There is still enough Amunah in tzadik emes. That lesson we take to heart. That lesson we accept gladly, tonight especially. We dedicate ourselves again. We rededicate ourselves after Hanukkah. A rededication to the true Amunah in tzadik emes and the true hope, the true bitachon, confidence that Hashem will bless us in the scripture of tzadik emes. We will see with our eyes the downfall of this story of Esav, the downfall of the Malchus and the Shor, and to see with our eyes the rebuilding of the Malchus the Kedusha, the base of Mikdash. Yes, we should feed him Hayah. Amen. Amen.
Sehr mogen zijn. Je kan niet redden kan Engels. Er bloezen dat ook als je kan redden kan Engels. Bloezen dat is gered naar Jiddisch. Ein het passiert met Maya Kluis, dus de bloezen dat bij te zingen a Zeime, maar gezoekt dat ze schoenen nemen, het is gegaan dat frisch is. Aber ich will auch sagen, also a dem Mächte, was man allein tut, das ist auch jetzt von der Blusen, der Mächte, was geschrieben hat, wieder lese. Der Blusen hat gesagt, der Talmud hat der Geisten wieder lese. Der Blusen hat mitgenommen können, zu Schluss. Hat geschrieben, der Mächte. Sabames, Damu, an der Stalke für der Blusen ist gewesen still, Damu. Man wollte, dass sie das gestappt, aber es ist nicht gewesen, dass es das gedacht sein. Weil wir wissen dann, an der Maya Kluis, sind gewesen den ganzen nahen Menschen, wir sind geblieben bei dem Luschen. Nahen, like, zwischen die nahen gewesen, der wieder lese. Wisst ihr, der Mächte, wo es der Anche Breslov, geschrieben sein Nummern, geschickt, der Reus von Breslov, als beteiligt ist, in Dafür für den Bussen. Wir haben geholfen, den Brief, wo ich habe mir mehr gesagt, ich rede Jiddisch. Der Rebbe hat geredet auf Englisch, hier kann ich reden kein Englisch, was soll ich sehen? Nie, Schumer, Lumme da. Wir haben geholfen mit der Saaluschen, der hat gesucht, Lumme da, soll suchen. Wir wissen sich nicht, das hat. Als Rav Rosenfeld hat vor Hashem getein ausgedet und hat genommen nach Husten mit der Nummer seiner ist Nussen. Bechlall in der Welt weiß man nicht, dass ja. Aber eine Sache will ich sagen. Fitness mich das Leben ist, das muss nicht das und Baraden sagen. Aber ich sage, aber schon gesagt, hinderte Mur in der ganzen Welt, als wir nicht finden, Arab mit der Talmud, Arabe Talmud, wo soll noch Zeit am Raben, in jeder Sport ist der Rabat gerettet, der geschrieben ist, in gewonnen hat Teure. Als hier was daran. Rav Nosson hat der Rebbe meine Brüche gesagt, aber Busenlehrer da, neutere Maza. Rav Nosson gewinnt der äußere Rabbensa. Der Pfarrer hat sich der Maldiver auf jeden Fall neben der Pfarrer. Weil ihr weißt, dass ich bin einer, was hat mal Fuhren gekommen ist, vielleicht vor, ich möchte am Nummer, noch gewollt mit eurer Brüder und verschicken das Bier. Le Marchakim, Le Marchakim. Hat gemeint, am verschickte Brüder das Bier, als viele Butel werden dem Rabbensa. Aber wenn beide Fuhren schon gedrückt habe, ich auch schon verhebne. Ich habe umgeholfen, ich habe geendet, und ich bin geboren, ich bin nicht mehr auf der Welt. Und das kann ich mir was sagen. Das Gibbe in Gashmi ist. Na, in dem Schiff, wo es das Mopf ist, deckt das Sachen, das Wurm durchs Haus der Mopf. Die Pizza meine sehr gekriegt. Der höchste Sache, der muss noch gewollt. Der muss im Mensch, die spätere Mächte, was ein Blättel. Sicher gewesen, zu sagen, dem Jahr der Tikuney beim Rav machen ziehen. Also der Tikuney hat er gedacht in Kiew, aber der Tikuney hat er mit allen Kindern beim Rav machen ziehen. Er geballte gesagt, nicht in der Hause. Noch einmal, ich will das verstehen. Ihr lernt mir Rabbis Fuhren. Ihr sucht den Tick nach Schule. Der Rabbi hat gesagt, noch eine Meile der Gewalt. Kann man was sammeln, Tzadik gehen, man muss heute zu machen, nach Ticken, will jeden nicht. Dann ich Aschko, weiß ich. Aber ich kann mir das Gehille Tzadik im Breiten, auf dem Rabbenschach, ist Chazat und ist Chazat. Ich habe gestartet mit das Haupt und sind damit mit Physik. Der Treibigste heißt mal, dass da jeder in seine eigene Gewölke in der Sonne von angetreten werden.